Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the session. First of all, appreciation to all of you for attending the class despite the India Pakistan match. Honestly, I wasn't expecting so many students. That shows you guys are very dedicated, right? So, pat on yourself and if possible, let me know the score as well in between in the comments. Just kidding. So, let's start with the early warning agencies. Let's take a look at which are the nodal agencies for early warning. This is mainly for your prelims. There can be a straightforward factual question from here. So I've given the entire table. I've taken it directly from NDMA's website. It is part of the National Policy and Plan. If you look at the National Policy and Plan approved by NDMA, all these details are given there. So I've taken it directly from there. So for avalanches, early warning agency is Snow and Avalanche Study Establishment. For cyclones, we studied its IMD. Drought, Ministry of Agriculture. Earthquakes, IMD. Of course, early warning is not possible, but measurement of earthquakes, identifying the epicenter is done by IMD. Epidemics, pandemics, Ministry of Health. Floods, Central Water Commission, monitoring the flood levels in dams and in the rivers, Central Water Commission. Landslides, Geological Survey of India. Tsunamis, INCOIS, Hyderabad, the Indian National Center for Oceanic Information Services. So these are the 8 important early warning agencies in India. So kindly remember them for which hazard they deal with, and this could help you in a prelims question. Now, we are in the last part of the discussion. We have to talk about the funds, the finance part of it. What is the center state relationship here? And we'll discuss the foreign aspect, how India plays a role in assisting others as well in disaster management. So these are the last 2 topics and we will complete our syllabus. So let me just open a new slide so I can clearly explain how the funding works. You have to understand the center state relationship with regard to disaster management and disaster funding. This is very, very important because it's often in news. It becomes a controversy as well regarding the sharing of funds. So under the DM Act, we saw earlier that a dedicated fund has been created, which is your National Disaster Response Fund. Don't confuse this with response force. Response force is different. This is NDRF, National Disaster Response Fund. The fund here is used for response operations, response activities. That is during disaster, when the disaster is about to occur, or if the disaster has already happened, immediate funds will be needed to finance the search and rescue operations, to provide for emergency essential supplies, to provide some immediate compensation to the victims who are affected. So for these funds, governments can't wait for the whole process to be followed where approvals have to be obtained by the legislature and the parliament, right? You can't afford that luxury here. It's an emergency situation. So you can't wait for approvals to come to draw from Consolidated Fund of India. So that is why a dedicated fund has been created for response operations under the DM Act. This fund has been established by the center. It's already functioning for many years. And the money for the fund, the finance, is raised through the union budget. In the union budget, funds are allocated to it by the center, which means the money is coming from our taxes. Through various taxes, both direct, indirect, including your GST, all the revenue the government is collecting, part of it will be assigned for NDRF fund. Now, this fund has to be distributed. This money has to be distributed into state funds, into SDRF funds. Every state will have its own state disaster response fund. Now, here, please understand that the primary responsibility of disaster management falls on the state government. The actual task of implementing these measures, managing these relief operations, providing for quick response by working with the district authorities and response forces, this responsibility lies with the state. Center can assist, it can supplement, it can come out with the broad policies, priorities, give all support. Even if armed forces are needed, it can provide. But states have to execute finally, they have to implement. So states will be the one incurring the expenditure. The whole expenditure on response will be billed to the state government. All right. So to assist the states in the finance part, the center will distribute the NDRF fund into SDRF. Whatever budgetary allocation has been made, this has to be split, divided for all the states by using recommendations of Finance Commission. Finance Commission, as you know, is a constitutional body. It would have given a ratio for distribution for different states, right? The center will consider all of this and finally distribute those funds into SDRF. Is that clear? Now, in the SDRF fund, 75% comes from center. Center will provide 75% funding. Remaining 25% should be raised by the states through their own taxes. States also have taxation powers. Correct? They raise their own finances as well. So funding is in the ratio of 75 to 25. This is for your regular states, general category states. For special category states, funding ratio is 90:10. 90:10 for special category, because special category states, they are either remote, located near border areas, they would be backward with very limited finances of their own, and they will be the most vulnerable, the most disaster prone. These special category states get 90:10. The funding ratio will be 90:10. So basically, if 100 rupees is collected in SDRF, 75 rupees is given by center, 25 rupees should be raised by the state for general states. For special category states, 90 rupees will be given by center, 10 rupees will be raised by the states themselves. This is the pattern of funding. Now, these funds can be used by the state government when a disaster occurs. Right? In a given year, multiple disasters will happen. A few hundred crores, close to a few thousand crores will be accumulated here. Drawing from those funds, immediate response will be financed by the state. All right. So this is the funding mechanism. Now, what if SDRF funds are exhausted? Let's say a state like Kerala or Uttarakhand, they face multiple disasters every single year. Same with Odisha. They are hit by multiple disasters. So there is a possibility that they might exhaust the funds. They might run out of it. They might need more funding. They might need additional funds. Correct? So there is a provision for this as well. Additional funds can be requested. The concerned state can raise a request saying that its funds are exhausted due to repeated disasters, or a particular disaster is of such a big magnitude that state funds are not enough, so it can raise a request to the center for providing more funds. Once the center is receiving the request, the central government will not immediately provide the funds. There is a process followed. Since additional funds are being requested, the center will first appoint a committee. It will form an interministerial committee. Interministerial team is formed by the central government. The Home Ministry forms this committee with NDMA. So the central government will establish an interministerial team by drawing the top officials, top secretaries and experts. A team is formed to go and visit the state. They will pay a visit to the state. They will review the situation. They will review the impact of the disasters that the state has witnessed. They will review the fund available in SDRF. How much funds are available and how the fund has been spent. Basically, they'll take stock of the situation. Right? States can request more funding. Once the request is received, the center will constitute an interministerial team. They will visit the state to conduct a thorough review. They will visit the affected areas. Let's say floods or droughts have hit a part of the state. They'll visit those areas to see the impact and document the impact. They will also see the funds which are available, which are left. How much has been spent? How much is left? How much is needed? Based on that, they will come out with an estimate. Then this is forwarded to the finance ministry to see if more funds can be given. All right, it will come out with a recommendation. Okay, these funds are needed. This amount is needed for the state to refill the SDRF. SDRF funds need a refill every now and then. It will get exhausted. So finance ministry will finally release the funds into SDRF. But however, this entire process is left to the discretion of the center. If the center feels the demand is not justified, it can deny additional funding. Please write down this point. Additional funds can be denied if center is not convinced that the disasters are not too serious, or if the funds are not well spent, if the funds are still available. Right? Center can decide this and can deny additional funding. So it's because of the discretion that is given, it turns into a big political controversy every time. It becomes a political controversy because the allegation is that the ruling party at the center favors only those states where it is in power. If it is ruled by the opposition, if it's ruled by opposition parties, there is a accusation that the center is not providing additional funds. Even if it releases additional funds, it's not adequate, it's not enough. This is an allegation that has come up from opposition ruled states such as Kerala and even West Bengal and others. These state governments have repeatedly alleged that ruling party at the center is discriminating because it has a discretionary power to release additional funds. States ruled by the ruling party are getting more funds sometimes, but states ruled by opposition are not getting additional funds. Even if it is given, it is less than what is expected. That is why it turns into a political controversy. All right. So this is everything that you need to understand about disaster funding, response funding. The other fund provided under the Disaster Management Act, the DM Act, provides for another fund, which is your National Disaster Mitigation Fund, which should be used for mitigation measures. This fund has not been created. Due to lack of financial resources, this fund is not yet established. Is that clear? Due to the lack of financial resources, the fund has not been established. Mitigation fund has not been created. So if you can understand this, it's more than enough. I've given all the points in the slides. Please go through that. Remember this pattern of funding. Know about additional funding request, why it becomes a political controversy. So next, coming to foreign assistance. Can state governments accept foreign donations? This is the next question. Can state governments, can they accept foreign assistance? What will the government of India do if foreign donors are looking to provide donations during disasters in India? What is the policy here? This is again an important topic because every now and then this controversy also comes up. For example, recently when Kerala witnessed massive floods, it was rumored and reported in media that UAE had announced $300 million in assistance to Kerala government, directly to Kerala government. UAE never confirmed it officially. It was just a rumor in the media. So then the Kerala government alleged that center is blocking foreign funding. The center is not allowing UAE to provide funds to Kerala state government. That's why it became a controversial topic. So let me tell you what the law says about foreign assistance. What does the DM Act say? The Disaster Management Act does not prohibit foreign funds. There is no explicit prohibition. All right. But however, the government of India established a policy under Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. It established a practice, a convention, that India will not issue any request for appeal, will not appeal for foreign assistance. We don't need foreign assistance. Today, we are self-sufficient. We have enough resources of our own. We have dedicated response forces, dedicated funds. We can manage our own disasters. We don't need foreign assistance. So as a matter of policy, as a convention, we do not accept any foreign donations. Is that clear? That is the policy of the government. The law does not prohibit. Under the law, it's possible. Government can raise a request, or if someone is announcing it, we can take the funds as well. But as a matter of policy, since the last 15 odd years, we have established this practice that we don't request foreign support, even if someone announces it. Let's say a friendly country or some country has announced a request. They've announced funds for India after a disaster. In that case, the Ministry of External Affairs will pitch in because it's a foreign policy matter. We will thank the government, our ambassador, high commissioner in that country. They'll meet the leader of that country who have announced funds for India out of goodwill, out of sympathy. So we'll meet, our diplomats will meet the leaders. We will thank them for their kindness. We will be grateful for them, but politely, we will decline the offer. This is the stated position of India. All right. MEA will handle the situation. It's a foreign policy matter. Right? So states can't demand that we will take foreign funds. States have no authority here. It's a foreign policy matter. The central government will decide. The established practice is that we don't accept foreign assistance. We don't request for it as well. If a government announces assistance, US, or let's say friendly countries, right? European countries or Japan or even China. You never know. In case of disasters, there is sympathy around the world. Countries might announce support and assistance. So our diplomats, our ambassadors, high commissioners, they'll meet the leaders and will politely thank them. We'll say thank you for the offer. It's great, very kind of you, but we don't need the support. We are self-sufficient. We are taking care of it. We'll politely decline the offer. We'll say if required, we'll come back to you. If we need support, definitely we'll reach back, and then maybe you can provide assistance. This is the approach of India with regard to foreign assistance. Is that clear? So if foreign donation is permitted, if foreign donations are permitted, it is usually for UN bodies and global NGOs, not for governments. The established policy is that we will not take funds from foreign governments because it can create unnecessary obligations in diplomacy. It could become a diplomatic obligation, because diplomacy is all about reciprocity. You give something, you take something. Today they might give assistance, we might take it, and tomorrow they might ask for some concession in some other area, or we will be obliged to give assistance as well next time if someone else is affected. So we don't want to take any such obligations right now. See, we will decide on a case to case basis. If other countries are affected, we will provide assistance, we'll always reach out, but we don't want others to help us because it becomes an obligation on us. Understood? So with regard to foreign governments practices, no, law is not prohibiting it. Law allows it if needed. There's no explicit prohibition, but government's policies will not accept it, will politely decline it. If it's coming from global bodies, multilateral organizations, UN related organizations, or global NGOs, we may allow it, we may permit, we may allow, again depending on the case to case situation, but the funds will be channeled to non-government organizations which are working in India. Government will not take it again. So there is no question in India of central government or state government getting those funds. Governments will not take it. In case of UN bodies and global NGOs, will look at the case. If MEA agrees that everything is fine, we can receive this fund, it will allow this, it may allow it, but the fund will be channeled to other organizations in India. The non-government organizations, they will use the funds to carry out the relief work and assist the government. The whole purpose is to ensure we have no unnecessary foreign obligations. Is that clear? This is with regard to our foreign assistance, our stand on accepting foreign assistance. Now, coming to my last point, the last point on how India is playing a leadership role in disaster management. How are we promoting global efforts? What are we doing through bilateral relations, regional groupings, and multilateral bodies? First of all, we have adopted all the priorities and targets of Sendai framework. We have fulfilled our commitments, even though it's voluntary and non-binding. We have adopted all the standards of Sendai framework into our national policy and plan. Apart from that, we are providing HADR assistance, humanitarian assistance and disaster relief to other countries. We are sharing our early warning systems with other countries in the region. Remember, we studied how, with regard to cyclone warnings, tsunami warnings, India is a regional center for distributing the alerts to all the affected countries. In the northern Indian Ocean, if cyclones are forming, right, the regional monitoring center is in Delhi, which is run by IMD. So we disseminate the alerts by coordinating with all the countries present here in the northern Indian Ocean. be it Iran, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Indonesia, even the West Asian countries. We work with them and we share early warning alerts with them. For all Indian Ocean countries, India is the primary country providing early warning for cyclones and tsunamis as well. Be it Maldives, Mauritius, Seychelles, then even East African countries. We are helping all of them by providing real time early warning alerts to them. Because we have the technology, we have built those early warning systems, we are using it in our diplomacy to project soft power influence, to aid other countries, to generate goodwill for India, to form stronger bonds with other countries. We also announce HADR support. We launch humanitarian assistance disaster relief operations where Indian Air Force, Indian Navy, NDRF, or even the Indian Army can be deployed in these operations to help the disaster affected countries. I can give you a couple of examples as well. We carried out Operation Maitri when Nepal was hit by a devastating earthquake in 2015. Indian Army, Air Force, and Navy and NDRF, all of them were deployed as Nepal was very badly hit by this mega earthquake in 2015. We helped them in search and rescue operations, supplied basic assistance. Recently, when Turkey and Syria were devastated by a massive earthquake just a few months ago, we carried out Operation Dost, through which we supplied relief material, sent specialists were sent in aiding search and rescue efforts and also to provide medical assistance. So there are many such examples. We have helped Bangladesh and Myanmar during cyclones. During the 2004 tsunami, we helped Sri Lanka, Thailand, Maldives as well. Mozambique, which is frequently hit by cyclones in East Africa, Indian Navy has helped Mozambique multiple times. During COVID-19, we carried out Mission Sagar to help several Indian Ocean countries by providing essential supplies to combat the pandemic. Then we carried out Vaccine Maitri to supply India-made vaccines free of cost to many friendly countries across Indian Ocean. So all these are examples of India emerging as a global leader in disaster management. During COVID, we gave support to our SAARC neighbors as well. So these are the various examples you can quote to show that India today has become a global leader in disaster management. The credit goes to the DM Act and the structure, the architecture which has been created in India. Today, we have not only become self-sufficient, but we are in a position to help others as well. So we are promoting this in multilateral regional groupings as well, such as BIMSTEC, at SAARC, at Indian Ocean Rim Association, and at various other platforms, including the Quad, the Quadrilateral, even at East Asia Summit, and at many other global platforms. BIMSTEC, in fact, has a disaster management exercise as well, which was conducted under India's leadership. Under BIMSTEC, the whole security sector is led by India. With the BIMSTEC grouping, all security related cooperation like counterterrorism, organized crime, energy security, and even disaster management. This sector is led by India under BIMSTEC. So we had organized a disaster management exercise. There is a dedicated platform under BIMSTEC to look at disaster management, which is again an Indian initiative. At SAARC, there is a disaster management center located at Gandhinagar, through which disaster management support is extended. Even IORA, Indian Ocean Rim Association. Here, India works with other countries like Australia and other major powers of Indian Ocean to help the smaller countries, the smaller island nations in disaster management. We provide HADR support to them, right? Even at Quad, East Asia Summit, and many other platforms, providing disaster management assistance is a top focus, a top priority. We work with ASEAN countries as well in this regard. So these are the global bilateral efforts of India. Understood? Today, we have the required military capabilities to provide such assistance. Right? We have sufficient naval ships which can carry the supplies and the forces and deploy them. We have big transport aircraft, strategic transport aircrafts like C-17 Globemaster, then C-130J Super Hercules. These are massive advanced transport aircrafts we have procured from the United States. They play a big role in military operations as well and in disaster management operations as well. So we are leveraging these assets, military assets of India, along with our disaster management institutions to deliver assistance to other countries to help them overcome the crisis. It's become a key part of our diplomacy, projecting our soft power influence and generating goodwill for India. Even at the UN, we play a very positive role. We contribute to these efforts through UN and other global bodies as well. So having this understanding will give you a more rounded picture about disaster management. So on whatever we have covered today, right, mains questions are definitely going to be asked. If not in this year or next year, you can definitely expect questions coming from these areas regarding funding, accepting foreign assistance, distributing the funds to the states, right? The whole architecture in India, the role of all these institutions, and the role we play in global affairs through disaster management. All these topics are very important. So with this, I conclude my discussion on disaster management. Trust me, we have covered all the important topics. I had given you one assignment. I'll keep it as an assignment to ensure all of you read about it. There is an initiative that India has launched called the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. It's an initiative launched by PM Modi. It's another global initiative of India. If you remember last weekend, I had asked you to read about one initiative of India for creating disaster resilient infrastructure. It's called CDRI, the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. The goal is to ensure infrastructure, that is critical infrastructure, is built in such a way that it will be disaster resilient, so that it can withstand the impact of disasters. So you can mitigate the losses. So it's an India-led initiative launched by PM Modi. So I'll keep it as an assignment. I want you guys to read about it, take it as a homework. So I've told you what it is, what it deals with. Just go through some more details about the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. So now, let us spend few minutes before we wrap up by looking at some previous questions. Also bring up any doubts you have. All right, I'll answer the doubts. In the meantime, look at the first two questions. It's from 2013 and 2014. Read the question. By that time, I'll take your doubts and questions. Vivek is asking I2U2 countries. No, I2U2 does not have disaster management. I2U2 is an economic initiative of India, Israel, US, and UAE. It's mainly on economic partnership. It does not deal with disaster management. Next, Vivek is asking, sir, Operation Ajay in Israel. That is an evacuation mission. Don't confuse evacuation missions with disaster management operations. We evacuated students from Ukraine. We have evacuated Indians from Sudan, right? From Libya, Lebanon, Afghanistan. From various conflict zones, we have evacuated Indians. But those are evacuation missions, not disaster management missions. Don't confuse the two. Aditya says donations always come with expectations. Very good. Donations might involve expectations from foreign governments later. Correct? So we don't want such obligations. That is why we have a stated policy that we don't take foreign assistance. Vivek is asking, sir, how raw IB play a role in CBRN? If CBRN disasters happen, where chemical, biological weapons are used or radiological nuclear devices are used, if it's an outcome of war or terrorism, obviously your intelligence agencies also get involved, right, to determine how the attack happened, right, who were the perpetrators, where were the material sourced from, the weapon source from. So intelligence agencies play a big role in national security, including in CBRN incidents. Avani is asking, what is PMMMS? PMMMS is Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. I think last question, Aditya is asking, sir, your annotated PPT and current affairs is more than sufficient. Yes, the class PPT, the annotations and what you have written, what notes you have made in class, this is more than enough. Along with that, be strong in your geography, be strong in environment ecology, and be strong in current affairs going forward. This is more than enough. You don't need anything else. Don't read a book for disaster management. Don't do that. Chituri is asking, if pathogens are used by terrorists, how to deal with it. Just like you deal with any biohazard, it's the same. Even if it's a terror or a war incident where bioagents are used, right? Just like you deal with a pandemic with all the containment measures, quarantine, testing, isolation, right? The same measures will apply for any biohazard. Okay. So guys, now look at some questions. I'll show you how easy the questions are. How important are vulnerability and risk assessment for pre-disaster management? As an administrator, what are the key areas that you would focus in disaster management? Such a simple question. You just have to define the two concepts which we studied in the first class. What is vulnerability? Explain that. Explain in your own words. Don't mug up the definition. Don't by heart it. Explain vulnerability in your own words. Risk assessment, disaster risk, which is hazard, vulnerability, and exposure. Draw that schematic as well to show how hazard, vulnerability, exposure create disaster risk. You can also mention that by tackling hazard, vulnerability, and exposure, you can reduce the disaster risk as well. So that plays a big role in pre-disaster management, in the pre-disaster phase. Then, according to you, if you are an administrator, which will be the key areas for you in disaster management? This is up to you. Prioritize maybe 3-4 areas, like obviously planning and preparedness, then preparing for better relief and response, and long-term reconstruction. So choose 3 areas, write about it, explain that with examples. Always add examples. Maybe real examples that have happened or even hypothetical examples. Explain that. For cyclone, we can mitigate the impact through such planning and preparedness. We can reduce the loss of life through better relief and rescue. So highlight those examples. Give that in your answers to substantiate the argument. Then look at this question from Drought. Drought has been recognized as a disaster in view of its party expense. This is actually spatial expense. There's a typographical error. Because of its spatial expense, temporal duration, slow onset, and lasting effect on various vulnerable sections. With focus on September 2010 guidelines from National Disaster Management Authority, discuss the mechanism for preparedness to deal with El Nino La Nina fallout in India. This was actually a geography question in paper 1, but obviously connected with disaster management. So, you know El Nino La Nina impacts Indian monsoons, which in turn could create drought conditions. So, start explaining in the introduction what is a drought. Why is it considered as a slow disaster? I explained this in detail. I repeated this multiple times. Why drought is a slow disaster? You can't determine the onset and its end. When it starts, when it ends. You can't determine that very clearly. Plus, it affects a very large area. A large spatial area is affected. And the temporal duration is also very different with droughts. The time period for which it affects a particular place and the extent of the region affected is very large and very hard to quantify. That is what makes droughts a very challenging disaster. So explain that, give that explanation about drought. Then point out how it affects the vulnerable sections, that is your farmers and the rural population. They are the most vulnerable. So maybe you can make 2 categories. Explain the impact on farmers and the agrarian economy and the rural population. List out some of the direct consequences, right? Crops will fail, loans will increase, debt burden goes up, farmer suicides can happen. So food shortage can be reported, inflation will happen. Mention all those points, and then based on what we discussed for disaster management, mention those guidelines, mention the measures, the schemes we discussed. And in the initial part, you would have examined the impact of monsoons on drought, how El Nino, La Nina plays a role in influencing the monsoons. When you talk about drought, right, how it is a disaster, there itself mentioned that Indian monsoons are influenced by El Nino, La Nina phenomena. El Nino brings good rainfall. We don't usually see drought conditions in El Nino season, but La Nina has a negative effect where we might see drought conditions. So that is the explanation you provide in a structured manner. So explain the disaster first, the impact on vulnerable sections, and what measures should we take? What measures have been recommended by NDMA? Next, look at these questions. Question number 3 from 2015. It's on earthquakes. Frequency of earthquakes have increased in the Indian subcontinent. So how is India's preparedness for mitigating the impact, and what are the gaps? Discuss various aspects. Very easy. First, you start with the geography part of it. Explain why Indian subcontinent is vulnerable, right? Explain the Himalayan belt, the tectonic movement which makes it seismically very vulnerable. Maybe draw a rough map of India, show the seismic zones of India. Apart from Himalayan belt, even Andaman Nicobar and Bhuj region, the Kutch region of Gujarat, they are prone to earthquakes. So point out India's vulnerability and then discuss the measures for mitigation, right? Whatever measures we discussed. But the biggest gap we have is with building codes. The building standards are not being followed. Most buildings in the country are not earthquake resistant or earthquake proof. Critical infrastructure also has to be made earthquake proof. So discuss all these mitigation measures as part of preparedness. Provide illustrations wherever needed, and that's it. Your answer is done. Very simple, very straightforward. Next, see, you have a question on cloud bursts in Uttarakhand. This was because of current affairs. In 2016, Uttarakhand saw many flash floods because of cloud burst events. So talk about cloud bursts, which we have studied in detail. Explain how it triggers floods, causes landslides, how Uttarakhand is the most affected. Then the strategy. What guidelines should be followed? What measures have to be taken in the 3 phases of disaster management? So I strongly suggest that all of you visit NDMA's website. Spend some time, you need few hours, go through important disasters that are mentioned here. NDMA has given guidelines. Basically, a list of do's and don'ts has been published by NDMA. So go through that. Then take a look at the national policy and plan, which is available as a PDF, a downloadable PDF on NDMA's website. See, policy and plan are very big documents. It runs into hundreds and hundreds of pages. Don't sit and study everything, not needed. I've already done that for you. I've taken a lot of content from here itself, from National Policy and Plan, and I've simplified it for you. I've summarized it for you. But it's always good to take a look on your own. Not entirely, but just glance through it. Just look at some key points, the boxes which are highlighted, some graphs and data which is given. It will give you more insight. It will give you valuable points that you can add in your answer. So spend some time, maybe dedicate one full day, maybe 8 hours for NDMA website. Go through all disasters, what NDMA says about the disasters. You can see the hazard vulnerability maps. You can read the guidelines on what to do, what not to do, which is given to the common public, and take a look at the national policy and plan. 8 hours is enough. Spend it one day, just one day, with a book, with a pen, jotting down some key points. So at the end, you will have some 15, 20 pages of notes, maybe, or even less than that, which you can add it to the class material, right? Maybe 10, 15 pages of notes from the website, which you can add it here along with your current affairs. That is more than sufficient. So like this, we have got questions on various disasters. See, there was a question on urban flooding, a question with regard to tsunami, especially the 2004 tsunami, and what mechanisms we have. How have we prepared for tsunamis in the future? Question on Hyogo framework and Sendai framework. That's why I told you it's important. All right. Defining disaster impact. Again, a core question, concept, the concept of vulnerability. How does vulnerability help in defining the impact of a disaster? Role of Jal Shakti Abhiyan in water conservation, in tackling water scarcity and drought conditions. Recent measures where the government has departed from its earlier reactive approach. How our approach has changed from reactive to proactive approach. So see, all the questions are on what we have covered. It's all basics. See, this is another basic conceptual question. Hazard zone mapping. What is its importance in preparedness? So such conceptual questions can come on basic concepts like hazard, vulnerability, mapping, etc. Or direct question on disasters like earthquakes, landslides, floods, cloudbursts, or even on the global framework. Right? This is all you can expect. This was on landslide management. Again, one more on earthquakes. So current affairs will actually give you a great idea. If you look at last 1 year's current affairs, the major disasters seen in India and around the world, that will give you an idea as to what topic might be more important, right? So going forward, please make a note. Just note down the major disasters which are happening in India and abroad, and accordingly fine tune your preparation for disaster management. Don't neglect the subject. Trust me, it's very easy. Even later, you just need 1 day to revise everything. You can easily answer 2 direct questions in disaster management, at least another 2 to 3 questions in geography or environment ecology, sometimes related to polity or science and tech or economy. So you can expect related questions. So just 1 day's effort can fetch you at least 3 to 4 questions, guaranteed. So don't neglect the subject at all. It's very simple. You need 1 day to revise everything. Be in touch with current affairs. Visit NDMA's website once. Make some basic notes. That's it. Going forward, you just have to open these basic notes, revise it. 1 day you're done. Guaranteed 3 questions at least, or 4 questions at least in your pocket. So I hope everything is clear. I hope you guys have understood everything. So yeah, that's it from my side. Let's end the session. Do let me know how it went. Feedback forms will be shared later. So do fill it out. It'll help us know how the classes are knowing, if there is any improvement we need to do. If it's going good, if you guys have liked it, that's a great encouragement for us as well. So do fill out the feedback forms, and I'll see you hopefully in another classes. I'll be taking international relations and internal security as well. So we'll get to meet again. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Have a great evening. If you're free, go back and watch the cricket match. Right? So that's it. All the best. Take care. Good day.